So Volo's Guide, when we designed it, and this is actually our kind of one of our big philosophies for all of our books. We are very much aware that D&D is growing rapidly. So a lot of the times we build these books, we assume that the person buying it, they've probably run 1 or 2 campaigns, and now they're ready to expand their game, kind of take it to the next level. There's kind of this pattern, which, I mean, we haven't verified it with research, but it's kind of like one of those, very typical story. People that run their first campaign, it's very like hack and slash. Like you put together a dungeon and you're kind of learning the rules and you're getting your feet under you in terms of how things go. And then you kind of hit this point where it's like, oh, I can tell really big stories and I can really, make interesting villains and NPCs and not just a monster to beat up. And for me, Volos is really aimed at that dungeon master who's kind of especially taking that step of thinking, maybe in my first campaign, I created a dungeon or put together a pretty straightforward story and there was a mind flayer and that was just the villain you beat up. But now that I've done that, the kind of the next step is I want to create a story where the mind flayer is a 3-dimensional character. Like it has motivations. Like who is this mind flayer? What does it want? And role playing becomes a bigger and bigger part of the game. And I think that's kind of a pattern you see with D&D players as they get used to the rules and the concept of it. They start to feel more comfortable thinking, oh, it really is about what's the character that I want to depict. And again, it goes back to the character races, thinking them as roles you're going to play. What's it like to play a tabaxi? Oh, you're kind of this hyper-caffeinated, super curious, thief or bard or something like that. And so that's really what it's aimed at. People, the players who've come back into D&D or into it the first time have been playing for a year or two, have those first campaign or 2 under their belt, and now they're looking for something with a little bit more depth in how they're telling their stories and how they're building their campaigns. So they want that 10 pages on society and psychology and attitudes and things like that. Within the book, there's actually 2 categories. We give you options for playing what creatures that are traditionally considered monsters. So that includes goblins, hobgoblins, and bugbears, along with the Yuan-Ti, the sort of serpentine, creepy creatures. Kobolds, orcs are in there too. And those, because they're all also covered under the new lore, we really just, we give you the game stats you need, but we kind of refer you back to the first chapter where we go into the details on some of the iconic monsters from all that role-playing inspiration. And then we feature a few new races, which are traditionally heroic, but they're not as common in the world of D&D. So that's the Tabaxi, which are our cat folk. We reprinted the Goliath. We introduced them about a year ago in an online supplement, and they're actually pretty popular. And we sort of look at what people are playing, so we wanted to move them into a print book, so it's more of a reference for people to use. There's the Kenku, who are this mysterious race of avian humanoids. They can't fly and they can't speak. Instead, they can only mimic sounds they've heard. So they kind of have this little bit of a sinister, weird backstory. They're kind of mysterious. We also have the Tritons, who are sort of the protectors of the deep underwater realms. They're the ones who live near the really deep ocean trenches beneath the waves and watch over them for bizarre threats that might come out of them. So, and I think the Tritons are a good example. We kind of think of these races as you get a chance to play something that's a little bit more alien than the typical D&D races. So the idea of a Triton, if you're playing one, it might be your first time on the surface world. So you get to play this real outsider type of character, things like that. And there's a race called the Aasimar. They're essentially humans who have angelic blood and have an angelic advisor that essentially tries to steer them the path of good. They're meant to be champions of justice and heroism. But you can also play one who's turned to evil. And that was a race. We had them in the Dungeon Master's Guide as an example of a new race. In Volos, we really fleshed them out with more unique mechanics and new art to make them really come to life. And all those new races, they're really meant to be, we kind of assume that you might be the outlier in your adventuring group, that everyone else is playing humans and dwarves and elves, and you're kind of playing an oddball. And the last one, we have the lizard folk, which were really fun. A lot of fantasy settings have lizard humanoids. We really tried to expand on what it would mean to be a humanoid lizard, as opposed to being a mammal. So we talk about how they don't really feel emotions. They don't understand emotions. They have a very alien mindset. And again, it goes back to this idea of giving people a real distinct character to play. We almost thought of them as like roles that you're giving someone for a play or a movie. Something that's really distinctive, something that's really different, and something that from a player standpoint would be really fun just to role play at the table. And it also really goes into in-depth on the lore, the history, the psychology, and the myths of a few of our most popular monsters. So we've got beholders, giants, gnolls, goblinoids, which includes hobgoblins, goblins, and bugbears, hags. So hags are really fun because we haven't really done much with Fae in the edition yet. So this is kind of our first foray into the Feywild. Kobolds, mind flayers, orcs, and Yuan-Ti. And I think I may have mentioned Yuan-Ti. If you're not familiar with D&D, there are these insidious serpent people who infiltrate human society and try to bend it to their will. So this is the actual Volo's Guide to Monsters. This is our standard cover. If you order from Amazon.com or if you go to like a chain bookstore, this is the book you'll see on the shelf. If your local game store is part of the Wizards Play Network, though, and by the time you see this, it might be too late. We may have sold all of them, but we also did do a limited edition cover for game stores. This is by a gentleman named Hydro74. It's got this really cool finish, and I don't know if you can quite see the highlights in silver on the Mind Flayer here. But so this is a limited edition. It might be sold out by the time you see it. I know they're moving pretty quickly. So, but I got my copy, so it's all good. So.
Thanks for watching. I'm Todd Kenreck. You can follow me right here on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and just about everywhere else. Thanks.